As dads, some days we feel like we have all the answers, and some days we feel like we don't have a clue. If that describes you, you're at the right place. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. Hey, you guys, I'm Ted Lowe, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Mr. Bobby Lewis.
Hey, man.
And Jason Hood. We're so glad you're here, buddy.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. You were here. You've been with us before.
This is my 6th episode, which I love this. This is so much fun. I was telling you guys yesterday after we recorded it, it's somewhat therapeutic in a way.
Yeah.
For me, at least personally, just being able to share part of what I've been through as a dad, but also as the son of a dad.
Yeah.
It's interesting, not to cut you out.
The son of a dad.
The son of a dad. I actually heard something the other day, and you just reminded me of it. There was a video that I saw online. It was a woman, and she was just recording herself and said, "Hey, guys, who do you go to talk to when you're having troubles?" And it was just a bunch of guys, like 6, 7 guys in a row. They cut the video, and they're like, "Nobody. I don't have anyone to talk to about my problems, and I don't even know how I would begin to have the conversation." And so I hope that us having these sort of conversations at least gives a guy something to listen to. Yeah. Maybe they can eventually branch out to talk to someone, but at least they can hear us chat about something, and that can be a start, and I hope that's helpful for people.
Absolutely. It does make me, Jason, it's the same way it's made me think about my relationship with my own dad more than I have in a long time. And I think that's helpful too. How old are your kids?
So my son is 8 and my daughter is almost she'll be 13 in like a few weeks.
Nice.
Bobby?
Same with me. Daughter will be 13 soon. Son's 8, and I got a 4-year-old who's giving us fits. So
But we have 74 kids ranging in ages 74. From 14 to great. Now 24.
Been working hard.
Well, we're doing what we can.
That's
we're
amazing.
doing what we can over there. Well, anyway, each week, as you guys know, we just ask one question that we explore, talk about what we've gotten wrong mostly, what we hope to get right, maybe a few things we've done right, and what do the experts say, and then leave people with one pro move, which is just basically something that's powerful, but is also doable for guys that live in the real world that aren't sitting around the podcast table.
Just to be clear, I'm not the expert.
You're not the,
you said,
none of us are. So we have to dig. We have to ask other people.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, they'll give you all kind of good information. Or the worst, it's always so frustrating how passionate it is about wrong answers.
No, it is. This is it.
This is it. I've complained to it.
Okay, robot. I'm terrified.
I've complained to it. I'm going, no. Anyway, Bobby, what is our question of the day?
Question of the day. What do you wish you had known sooner as a dad? And since you have 74 kids, you should have a lot to say about this. Yeah. But I actually thought about this in terms of how we were as kids. What do you think your own dad would have wished he'd known about you sooner when you were growing up?
I don't know if I know that he wished he knew it, but I wished he knew how I'm just a sensitive person in general. Like I wear my feelings on my sleeves. My highs are high. When I don't get very, very low, but when I do, it's tough for me. Yeah. And I think I wanted so much attention and from my dad, and so much affirmation from my dad. And I don't know if it was an uncommon level. I mean, because I don't know what everybody else feels about that, but I know for me, it was like, I craved it so bad. And so I wished he would have, he, like we talked about in previous podcasts, is like, he was one of those, be a man, step up, do the right thing, like really tough dad. And some of that has translated into my adult life. Like some of that, I'm like, okay, I'm glad that happened. But some of it was really hurtful and made me scared and all this stuff. And so I wish he knew about my personality and how the way he was affected me as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Yeah. I was raised by a stepfather from the time I was like 10 years old. And so that's the guy that we call dad in our family, and love the man. Obviously it changed the trajectory of our life, which was special. But I wish that he had known that, he was a bigger deal than he probably thought he was, and I think that a lot of dads kind of minimize their contributions in some way, or just think I'm around, that's good enough.
Sure.
You need to be present. You need to be active. We've talked about that on another podcast, but I think for my dad specifically, because he was a stepdad, I wish that he had known that him being there was monumental, right? For myself and my siblings. And, that probably should have been conveyed more.
Yeah.
Sweet. I think we talked about this a lot. Hopefully that not every dad listening right now is, married, and there's a lot of single dads and there's a lot of stepdads, and wow, step parents are important too, right? Like they matter. They matter. I think looking back with my dad, I am so thankful that he has the temperament that he has, because he was never mean, and I would do such frustrated things with ADHD. I mean, it was just all these crazy things that I still do today. I mean, even on this trip, I put my luggage in a rental car, and then I went, I can pick which one I want. I don't think I want this one. And so I moved to the next one. And then I drive to the hotel. And guess where my bag
Without
is?
your luggage?
It's in the one, And I can remember when I was little, we were at a theme park, it's got this huge swings going around. And there's probably 50 swings on there. And I decided at the last minute, I think I want that one because it's on the outside. And I think they go higher. Just right before it's taken off. And I run and I drop down the thing. And I mean, it was crazy. And my dad is still shaking when I get there. And he's so calm with me on that. He still talks about that story, but I'm so thankful he was like that. I think the thing I needed maybe a little bit more was for him to check in on the sensitivity part. Because my mom passed away when I was 10. I think I just needed him to check in on that. I don't think he knew how.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, I don't think anybody taught him how. So I've got no judgment on that. But I do think that that's what I need. That this kid's going to need, like, how you doing?
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was parenting myself a lot.
Yeah.
And kids make terrible parents of themselves.
And I think
I did for sure.
I think this is a really good question for us to dive into today. What do you wish you'd known sooner as a dad? Because that implies that we're learning as we're going. So hopefully, today, Jason, we got 13-year-olds. Ted, you've got kids who are in their early 20s. Like, hopefully we know more than we did 13 years ago or 20 years ago, whatever the case. But we should always be learning as dads, and we should always be picking up on the cues from our kids and always be applying these things to our lives. But I hope that when we look back, we say, wow, like all of that information that we've gathered over the years, we're just building us into a bigger, stronger, better dad for right now, because the problems don't get easier.
Yeah.
They get harder. You know, when they're little, it's like, I'll change my diaper. Okay, it's a pretty simple fix. When they're 15, they're like, I had my first boyfriend break up with me or whatever. And you're like, oh crap, that's a lot harder than a diaper. You need to compound all this information. So hopefully the things that we wish we knew sooner, we can, kind of build ourselves up as dads so that we're even stronger next year and next year and next year after that.
Yeah, that kind of leads to what I was thinking about with this is there's two things I thought about with this when you posed that question to us. One is people tell you this all the time. So it's not like you didn't hear it, but when you're younger and your kids are younger, people say, don't blink. Because your kids are going to grow up so fast. And now Piper's about to turn 13 and it's like, man, I have 5 more years with her. And I'm thinking about like her potentially leaving the house and what she's going to do in her future. And it's like, it's not that I wasn't told that, but I didn't understand it. Yeah. To the level at which obviously I start to understand it now. And I still don't understand it, at the level I will when she's 18 or 20 or whatever. But I wish I could have grasped that so that I could have made a better plan for the things I wanted to make sure that I'm passing on to her.
Well, it's crazy. We have very good friends that we've known for, probably 6-7 years now and struggled with fertility and just miraculously became pregnant this past year and had their little baby girl, a month ago or so. And so we went over to their house to see this sweet little baby, 2-week-old baby. And my daughter, who's almost 13, is holding this baby. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, first of all, how sweet that, you're allowing this 13-year-old to hold your little 2-week-old baby. But secondly, this baby looks so small in her arms. And I thought, dang, 10 years from now or however many years from now, like she could be holding her own baby. And it was such a weird moment for me. I'm like, wow, they're not going to stay little. And so the stuff that I'm trying to plug into today, I hope that I'm a better dad now than I was a couple years ago. And I hope that 10 years from now, I'm a better dad than I am today.
Yeah. It speaks to the intentionality thing that we were talking about in a previous episode. Right. It's like, and I don't think you're ever going to get to a point where you're great with the amount of time you spend with your kids. Like it's always going to be like, I wish I had more time. Yeah. But at the same time, you can have confidence that I I did the best I could in the time that I had because I was intentional with them.
Right. No,
And I don't
good.
think we want this episode to come off as like regret. Like we don't want dads to say, "Oh, I wish I'd known this sooner because I screwed up royally." It's okay. Like you're going to make mistakes, and that's part of learning and becoming better at anything. But what we want is for us to go through a little bit of a list of things today and to start applying them now. And not to do it just because, you messed up in the past, but to say, hey, future you is really going to appreciate you learning this stuff today. And I hope that's what comes across for today's episode.
For sure.
Yeah. And the thing I got excited about this episode is it's almost like having somebody down the road a little bit to say, hey, I wish I'd have known this. I mean, I always love that phrase. Instead of calling somebody a mentor, just get somebody down the road. You know, no one's smarter than anybody else. They've just go, hey, when you go around this curve, there's a bridge. You better watch out.
They've seen it.
They've seen it. And so I think to shortcut folks, the line about it goes by a blink, it's true. But I always was so frustrated as a young dad when I would hear that. Like I had this magic dust that I could sprinkle in the situation. I was just choosing not to do it. And I know what they were saying. They were saying, hey, make sure you're intentional, which I think is true.
Well, and in those moments, it feels like an eternity. Like, are they ever going to sleep at night? Are they ever going to, like, you know what I mean? Like in those moments, you can't grasp it because it feels like, oh my gosh, we've been in this phase of life for so long when really it's just been a minute.
Oh, just when you're like walking around like the Walking Dead and somebody walks up and goes, it goes by like a blink. And I'm like, good. You know, I'm exhausted.
Exactly.
I'm exhausted. No, but I do like, somebody a little bit down the road wants some wisdom. I think for me, one of the things that I would say is kids need correction, but calm correction's the way to go. The good news for my kids is that I'm high energy. So we did a lot of fun things. We had a lot of fun. We were going to do an episode on fun. So I texted them last night and I said, what's your best memory of travel trips? And so that was fun. And so they got that from me, but they also got the high energy intensity of correction that I had to be really careful out of the gate. And so the great thing is our couple down the road, we watched them parent their kids. In fact, they were the couple that every time we'd start talking about having kids, they would go, give it 5 years, buddy. Like you got the rest of your life. So we would keep their kids and we'd be like, oh yeah, we can wait a little bit longer. But I would watch how that they would parent. And part of the things that I love what they did is they were so calm in their correction. In fact, they would do this thing and I loved it. And we tried to do it with our own kids, where if their kids were disrupting or things to a level that, was being disrespectful or whatever, they would say, hey, buddy, come here just a minute. Hey, sweetheart, come here just a minute. And they would pull it into the side and they would whisper in their ear. So there wasn't any shame. There wasn't. And that was one of the things that would actually calm me down because just using that voice, I would calm down. Of course, sometimes I'm like, you better get it together. I always go,
talking through your teeth.
And I'd lean over to listen to it, but talk it through my teeth. But I think that was a thing. You always hear people, you just need to calm down. Like, I think that's a parenting principle. Just take a breath and just calm down.
And your tone probably matters too.
Sure.
And I think dads sometimes, because we have deeper voices, we can kind of sound intimidating or scary to a little kid. We've talked in the past about how we're just physically bigger than kids. And so that can be intimidating sometimes too. But the tone of voice, if you're going to come at them with this calm, relaxed tone and say, listen, that was a mistake. We're not going to do that again. You don't run on the road or whatever, whatever the conversation is, but you do it in a way that is more acceptable to a child's ear as opposed to stern. I think that can be good. Encouragement over scorn, I guess that's the way to put it.
Sure. Body language matters too. They say it's like 80% of communication or something like that. And my dad was 6'3", 250, 260. I mean, so for me,
that's small.
I'm like, oh my God. Even if you raise your voice a little bit and stand over, it's like a monster is screaming at me. But
that's good. And that is the thing about getting down on one knee. So you're like, I'm taking the size out of this and I'm looking at your face. And when you look someone in the eye, the brain research says, neuroscience reveals that it creates empathy in your brain for them. Isn't that fascinating when you look at them? Like, let me look in their eyes because kids when they're little, like when you see them sleeping at night, is there anything sweeter on this planet? You're like, you've had the worst day ever and you go in there and that baby is laying in there. I'm telling you, it's sweet. And so I think just being tender with them, being calm with them,
Yeah.
Another thing we try to do with our kids that we were taught, actually, we learned it some parenting book. It was basically, it's you and your spouse are on teams with your kid about, hey man, this consequence, I'm so sorry that you're late, because now you got to not be out for 2 weeks. You got a curfew. Oh, I'm so sorry that's going to happen to you. But since you made this choice, that's what's happening. Yeah. So it was always that kind of voice. And it was just like, oh, this is about your behavior. And so I just think, again, just to wrap that up, it's just calm correction.
Well, one of the other things that I think I would love to have known earlier in my parenting life is that the correction you point out is very important, and how you do it's important. But there's times for correction, but there's also times for connection, and you have to blend the two. Like sometimes yelling is just, maybe you feel like it'd be appropriate. It's just not the right time. Correction and connection, you got to balance these two things.
Well, I see that with my son. He's 8 and he's very much like me, very similar. I was on ADHD medicine when I was younger, and I was just like all over the place. And now I see that from him, and I call my mother. I'm like, I am so sorry.
Sorry, Mom.
but
Right.
I look at him and I think, sometimes I start to get, because I can't understand, like, how do you still make the same choice that we've talked about 100 times? And I'm like, remember that you were the same way, and you did the same things, and you made the same types of choices. You just, he just blows right past things and doesn't think. And I'm just like, oh, and people are like, oh, he's just all boy. And I'm like, yeah, great, cool. And so for me, a lot of times when I start to lose it because he made that same choice that we've talked about 100 times, I'm like, I've lately started to stop and say, hey, buddy, what were you thinking about when you made that choice? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, that's my cue to say he wasn't thinking.
Right.
And he's 8. That's why he wasn't thinking. And so, we just have to figure out how to teach him how to think ahead.
My 13-year-old is very mature, or almost 13-year-old, to the point where I have to constantly remind myself she's not 15. She's not 16 because she's just very mature and wise for her age. But same idea is like, I have to remind myself I can still treat her like she's 12. I don't have to treat her like she's older, even though sometimes she acts old for her age. And that's important, because that my natural tendency is, because you're older, you should know better by now.
Right.
Well, maybe not. I need to connect with you before I just kind of correct the things I think you should already know.
Well, and that too, our daughters are very similar in that way. And it's also not trying not to compare them, right? It's like, my son is wild and he does whatever he wants to do, and he's he's very excitable, but he has the best heart in the world. Whereas my daughter's very mature. She makes good choices. She's diligent. She's analytical. She pushes herself. We don't have to push her. And then I look at my son and he's like, I do what I want. So it's hard for me sometimes to be like, not comparing them. I try to never say, did you see how your sister handled this? Because they're two different kids. They're completely different kids. And sometimes we point at ourselves like, how did we get here? We're the same parents, but we got this one doing this, and we got this. And it's just a testament to everybody's different.
One of the things on this whole idea of connection versus correction, or trying to do both, I had taken my son on a father-son retreat. And one of the guys that was leading the camp, he said, guys, spend as much time as you can this time just connecting with them, and as little time correcting them, because this is a weekend about connection. And it was so eye-opening for me, because I realized, I think it was 5 or 6 at the time, just how much I was correcting him for things that was just childish or fun. I'm going, you don't need to say anything. Yeah. So it's a great filter for that. Yeah. And I believe the more we're connected with them, the less we have to correct them. In fact, we had someone tell us
they'll probably receive correction better too.
They do, because a friend told us that if you don't know what's going on with your kid, you're like, I don't know what's happening with your kid. Just spend some time connecting. Yeah. That has been helpful. I wouldn't say it cured it, but it's been helpful 100% of the time.
Yeah. Another point that I think dads should put into practice now, just so we can get into, being more connected with our kids, is to recognize that they have different communication styles and different skills and different abilities. And, my son, you have to tell him 7,000 times to do one task. And my daughter, it's like one time. You know, and it's like, okay, well, they communicate differently. And just the other day we had our 4-year-old, she was having just this rough moment and just not wanting to listen. And it was over a silly thing. Like it was like eat the potato or something. Like it wasn't even that big of a deal, but she was just having a tough day. And so my wife got down on her knees and looked at her and just said, look at me. And as soon as they made eye contact, she said, I love you. That's all she said. And daughter went back to having a fit and then got down and I was sitting right there with him and same thing, eye contact again. I love you. And after the process of doing this over and over again, she softened and then received the message we were trying to give her. And I think that's a good example of what we can do as dads is like, don't just assume that because you said it, it's going to plug in. Yep. They may not communicate with just one word. You may have to do it over and over again. You may have to actually take some time to stop and eye to eye, figure it out. You know, they communicate totally differently.
Yeah.
I just can't believe the difference for us. And this is not true for every kid, but our daughter was so different than boys. Like my daughter, I never forget, she was young, 2 or 3, and we were just playing and she grabs me by the face and she said, look at me when you talk to me. Yeah. And I was like, I still don't think my kids could pick me out in a lineup. You know, they haven't seen me ever, but it's just this different of connection. Like they tend to connect and we can communicate what I've been told, you know, shoulder to shoulder, which for her, it's, you know, it's more eye to eye. So that's just different styles for them. And again, so every kid's different.
Yeah. Another thing to remember is that routine is good. I think we get into this mindset of like, all right, it's got to be fun and spontaneous and you're a fun dad if you just, whatever happens, happens. Well, routine is good too, because there's structure involved in life. And if kids understand that, okay, we're going to have dinner and then we're going to put our pajamas on and then we're going to do our book or prayers or whatever we do and then go to bed, like that builds into their day where there's stability there. And so routine can be good. Yeah.
My wife is the queen of routine. I mean, she's got it all laid out every single day. And this is one thing I wish I would have known more, kind of as a dad, but also as a husband. I said to her all the time, I was like, hey, just tell me what to do, right? Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'll be happy to do it. I just need to know what you want me to do. But that's not what she wants. She wants me to be in it with her and understand what needs to be done and just take it off her plate without her having to ask. And I think that's the same way with parenting and the routine thing, because I am the go with the flow. I'll do whatever, you know, she comes up with things that we do almost every weekend. I mean, we are just on the go. It is not rest time on the weekend. It is playtime on the weekend, but she's the planner and I'm the experience, like make it as fun as possible.
I'm going to do this plan, but you're going to need to bust out all your fun when we get there.
Exactly. And if we get off schedule, then she starts to get stressed out. So if I take the fun too far and start you know, taking it too much time doing one thing, it's like, hey, we still have a schedule. And I'm like, oh yeah. Okay.
So you got to honor the routine.
Right. Yes. So for me, it's like, I need to be more intentional with her about being aware of what the whole plan is and then thinking through what are the obstacles and then solving those problems before they come.
Well, as a kid who grew up with, you know, mom till I was 10, who was, you know, she was loose and fun and whatever, but moms do so many things. Dads do too, but like stereotypical mom stayed home dad worked. And when she passed, the routine went out the window. And I look back now, it's because one of the things I've thanked my wife for all the years, thank you that you know what's going on with them. Thank you that they never show up at school without a coat. They don't show up at school. They're not prepared. I mean, she's 5 steps ahead of all of us, but just honoring our wife's routine, I think it's huge. I know that it makes kids feel safe because when it got removed from me, it was tough.
Yeah. I do feel like there are days where my wife's playing chess and I'm looking for the checkers pieces.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm not even playing checkers yet, but she's like mastering chess. You know?
You're wandering around in the yard.
Looking for the chickens.
Yeah. I know. And last thing that I think we should drive home with dads who are listening before we land the plane here is just enjoy this. I mean, it's a big job. Being a dad is huge. There will be no bigger job that you'll ever have in your life. You can be a CEO. You can run with the biggest corporation in the world. It will be nothing compared to your task as being a dad and doing this well. Just because it's a big deal doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. And so we have to remind ourselves, like, not to get too serious about every little thing, but just you're only going to have them, like you said, a couple of years in your home, and then they're going to be up and they're gone and they're doing their own life. Enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah. And I think if you simplify that even more, is you just, you really think about how you want them to know. This is what I think about, at least. I just want them to know that I love them with my whole heart and that I'm for them in whatever they are going to do in their life. Like I want you to know forever, no matter what happens in the future, that I love you. I'm in it with you, and I will support whatever support you. I may not agree with the decisions you make in the future, but I will be here. And I think if you can boil it down to just like believing that and feeling that in your heart, I think the actions will come. Right. I think the things you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. Well, if you think about it that way, if you use that grid when you think through it, you'll just do the things that you think you should do.
Good. That's good. And I think on the enjoy the ride part, we just got to take a breath and watch. Like we got to take a breath. Look at them. Isn't that extraordinary how different they are? And you see your son, you're going, look at him being little me. How crazy is that? And you watch him go, I don't have to change him because I can't. Right. I'm just going to watch this. And just watching the way they interact. And sometimes it's not great, but I just think isn't this a crazy, wonderful life that we have going on with kids? Even when it's tough, it's just, we should enjoy the ride.
When's the last time you guys went to a theme park with your kids? Recently?
No.
So I only ask because we had passes to a theme park here, and we took our kids, and my son was just tall enough now to go on these big roller coasters. My daughter is tall enough. She's been doing them for years, but this was like the first time he can go on the big ride. And so we stood in the line for however long it was. We got on the ride, and he's sitting next to me. He's real nervous. He's like holding my leg and stuff. And my daughter's in the back going, she was loving every second. But it was like, man, this is so cool. And we were on the ride, and it's doing the flips and it's doing the spins. And then it ended. And I was like, that's it? We stood in line all this time, and the ride is over, and it's been like a minute and a half. And then I thought, like, that's kind of like fatherhood. Like, it's so fun, and it spins, and it's crazy, and then they're gone.
And you want to puke.
Well, I'm not going to puke. No. But all that to say, like, it's not going to last as long as you think. Enjoy the spins and the turns and the flips. It's going to be over, and let them hold your leg and hold your hand if they're nervous, and just get through the ride and have fun and release them and say, wasn't that cool? You know,
it's deep stuff there, Bobby.
That is
it's good.
Also, spend a lot of money because the park's expensive.
I was about to say,
That's part of
that's all kinds of analogies right there. The money, the time, the emotions.
I know.
The nausea. Okay, so what is our pro move of the day, Bobby?
I think our pro move for this episode should be find that guy you call it the down the road dad, the dad that's a couple years ahead of you, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, and ask him a question about how to do this well. You know, they've experienced more than you have. Find that down the road dad, plug in, and just pick their brain.
I love that. And we love that you guys are listening right now. Thank you. We know you have lots of options of podcasts to listen to. We hope listening to this one actually will help you to be more the dad you want to be. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the All Pro Dad Play of the Day, by going to allprodad.com/subscribe and get daily powerful and practical fatherhood tips in your inbox. The All Pro Dad podcast is hosted by me, Ted Lowe, produced by Bobby Lewis. As we wrap up today, I want to share something that's important to us here at All Pro Dad. We believe that every child deserves to know the love of a mom and a dad. We hope you believe the same thing and might even be willing to take an extra step to change a child's life. Around the country, but especially in the state of Florida, where All Pro Dad is based, there's a pressing need for medical foster care parents. These foster care parents provide crucial support to children with complex medical needs. To be a medical foster care parent, you don't need a medical background. We've partnered with a local community-based care agencies and the Florida Department of Children and Families who provide comprehensive training. If you can offer the vital medical assistance these children need, along with compassionate care in a family environment, you're prepared to be a true medical foster care champion. Learn more by visiting mfc.floridahealth.gov. That's mfc.floridahealth.gov.